My name is Craig Willie, and I'd like to talk to you about picking out a router for your home network. When setting up an internet-enabled network, picking out a router that best fits your needs will help maintain an efficient network. Most of the general public knows very little when it comes to setting up a network or a router, much less how to pick out one that suits their needs. The first question we're going to touch upon is, what's your home network going to be used for? My family and I, we have many devices that we have connected to the internet through our router at all times, as well as I like to use it for a lot of internet-based gaming, both with different consoles and the PC. Many other people may just want a family network just for casual browsing, or maybe a single person wants one just for casual browsing and social media. When picking out a router, you have to be aware of many different features, kind of like how many plugins do you have for devices or ports. Are you going to be streaming a lot of movies, music, and other types of media? With linking all the devices, do you plan on doing any maybe like local area gaming or basically sharing of files between those devices? All of this stuff kind of really needs to be taken into account when picking out a router. Which brings me to my next point, which are the different types of routers and features to look for. There are many different brands of routers out there, and if you go to any of the major retailers, they of course carry the top stable ones. I personally recommend Linksys, and my second recommendation would probably be Netgear. Although Belkin is proven over the years to become a more reliable one, I still would stick with Linksys. Each one offers their different ranges, kind of like you would buy a car. They offer different ranges of features included with their router. Certain things like hard lines in, which would be with like your Cat 5 or whatever the equivalent for today's current day and age would be, as well as Wi-Fi and combination hardline and Wi-Fi routers. In my personal use, I do hard lines to pretty much all my gaming consoles because it ensures a stable connection and doesn't have to devote any of the extra power for the system to connect to the Wi-Fi. So for me, having both for Wi-Fi for my wireless devices and for my consoles, it actually makes more sense. There's also different bandwidth limitations. Being a gamer, I tend to use a ton of bandwidth. Also, we do a lot of downloading of movies, music, and streaming of files too, so we do need a lot more bandwidth as a family. But if you're just browsing the internet and just email, Facebook, and stuff like that, you probably could go with a lower bandwidth and more economy-based router. Things you'd want to take into account would be the Wi-Fi range. We have probably a mid-range Wi-Fi router in my house, which means I can pretty much access the internet from my back porch, my upstairs, obviously the living room. That kind of makes a big difference in price too. The more farther range of a router you want of Wi-Fi, the more it's going to cost. Likewise, if you get an economy router, don't expect to really be able to go a few rooms away and get decent service. Other things to take into account when buying a router is how many ports do you want open on your router for other devices to connect. Obviously, the more ports, the more expensive, and different brands and different reputations. I've already touched upon that with Linksys. I've always had Linksys routers, and I thoroughly stick with them. I think they're the best brand on the market, and they offer really great customer service. But anyway, also styles. There's many different looks and aesthetics to routers now. You have your typical blocky looking routers, and you have some pretty smoothed out, streamlined looking routers. Honestly, some of the performance is different on the routers. Personally, I don't care what my router looks like as long as it performs very well. But if that's your gig, you are going to pay more for a more aesthetically pleasing router than you would if you just got some old box with blinking lights. As well as other things to consider is how familiar you are with setting up networks yourself. A lot of routers nowadays, you can actually buy like an easy start router. I've set up a router manually by myself, and it is such a pain. And the router I have currently, it's easy. It's a USB stick. You stick it in your computer, and you just follow the menu prompts, and it sets up so easy. Password, everything. we did have to pay a little bit more for that, but it's definitely a convenience worth looking into, because if you're not really familiar with what you're doing, you could really hurt yourself and your network. So it's definitely worth kicking in the extra bucks for the ease of setup. Which also now brings me to my last thing, is wasting money on unnecessary equipment. You of course need to take into account like the features you're looking for and how they're going to work with you and your network and how efficiently you want it. Obviously, the more features and the more stuff you need it for, the more expensive it's going to be. But the ideal thing here is to not buy something too ridiculous that you're never going to utilize all of its features. So if you're not trying to pick up Wi-Fi down the street, then you don't need to buy a ridiculous router to do so. So you definitely want to kind of pick within your budget, but in a way that you're not blowing money on things you really don't need. I definitely would have to say, don't ever buy the cheapest router on the market. As with many technology stuff, and you probably know this already, is you kind of get what you pay for, and it really speaks volumes in the router industry. That's yet again why I always go with Linksys. They're not the most pricey, but they're definitely like the better brand. I do recommend is researching the brands and compare features between different brands. A lot of the top brands like Linksys, Netgear, and the Rising Belkin, they do offer comparable routers that offer about the same features, but each one kind of has like a different things. One may offer more Wi-Fi range, and the other one may offer more bandwidth allotments and stuff. And it's really important to pay attention to that, because it's ultimately your money. You don't want to waste it. If you do have questions about a router, definitely seek somebody who knows something about like setting up networks and stuff. Like may it be the IT professional who lives down the street, or that guy that always builds these awesome gaming computers or something. I really don't recommend talking to the salespeople at either like Walmart, Best Buy, or something. I definitely know for like Best Buy and places like that, they get sort of a commission for what they sell. So they're really not going to try to sell you something that fits within your means, but more or less the more expensive one that you really may not need. But yeah, that pretty much sums that up. We live in an ever-growing world of technology, and it's easy to get swept away in the madness. And when it comes to setting up a home network, you really want something that's going to work for you and work the best for you and your family. And you really don't want to pay too much for it. So there's many options out there, and it's easy to get confused. But just keep your head on straight and pick what you would need, and you really can't go wrong. Thank you.